Alright, another quick video here. Just a quick update on what I've been doing the last 2 days. Today is day 3 of the NAEU launch, and as you can see, I've got 3 bars to level 50. My main is item level 550, and I have 2 alts at level 340. And the reason I parked them at 340 is so that they can farm the first Abyssal dungeon, which gives 160 gold per character per week. Now, I'm not going to talk too long about what I've been doing or what I've been planning to do. If you really want to know, just come over to my Twitch, twitch.tv/Aiyulol. I've been streaming every day, almost all day. So if you have any questions about my plans or about anything in general, Lost Ark related, just come by and say hi. Now, what I really want to talk about today is engravings. When you first hit level 26, actually, you unlock engravings, but you don't really have to worry about it until level 50. Or so most people think. But what I really want to talk to you about today is that you don't have to worry about it until tier 3. And here's why. Even without the catch-up mechanics, we're going through tier 1 and tier 2 pretty quickly. As you can see, after 2 days, my main is level 550. Once I hit level 600, I'll be able to go to Yorn, which is tier 2. Now, tier 2 to tier 3 will take a little bit longer, but the same logic applies. There's not really much content, at least in my opinion, in tier 1 and tier 2, where you need very good engravings. Now, a lot of people have been overvaluing engravings, and I don't blame them. If you read any guide about Lost Ark, all you hear about is engraving, engraving, engraving. So it's not a surprise that a lot of new players especially have been worrying a lot about engravings, and it's a question that I've been getting a lot on stream as well. As you can see here, I've been selling all kinds of engraving books for gold. That's just the tip of the iceberg. I've made almost 4.5k gold from selling engraving books in the last 2 days. This is entirely free to play, by the way. As you can see here, the engraving market is crazy. A Berserker's Mayhem engraving, one of their class engravings, is going for 699 gold for a blue book. The Bard's class engraving is going for 500 gold, and so on and so forth. You can see that the engraving market is absolutely nuts right now, and stuff like this wouldn't even come close to this price on other servers. I'm not saying that you can compare Korea, servers that have been out for years, with NA, a server that's been out for 2 days. But what I'm trying to say here is that there's no way that it's worth investing this much gold into one engraving book early on. Keep in mind that buying one of these books doesn't even unlock the engraving. You have to read 20 of these books to even be able to use the engraving in the first place. If you're a new player and you're freaking out about engravings, my advice to you is don't worry about engravings until tier 3, or at least until you know what you're doing. Don't go into the auction house and buy 20 grudge books for 200 gold each because you read a guide that says you need grudge 3. Then you might be thinking, well, so I'm supposed to play the game with 0 engravings, and that's not true entirely either. So what engravings am I using? As you can see, I have 4 different engravings, most of which are garbage, but I have level 1 Drops of Ether, level 1 Desperate Salvation, which is the Bard class engraving, and then 2 random engravings that I happen to have on my ability stone. So you can just ignore these because they're actually not good engravings at all. As you can see, this one gives me damage based on my move speed, which is useless because I'm a bard. And this one gives me a little shield when I fall below 30% HP on a massive 5-minute cooldown. It's also a very, very poor engraving. So really, I just have 1 Drops of Ether and 1 Desperate Salvation. But if you've been watching my stream, you'll know that I've gotten all the way to level 550 and I've cleared every dungeon and content in the game without a problem so far. Even in Korea, you can clear pretty much all the way up to Argos Phase 1, the first mythic raid, with just level 3 of 1 engraving and level 1 in your class engraving. Just to give you a sense of how much engravings are needed way later on, even in tier 3. In addition, from doing islands, you also get a bunch of these uncommon engraving recipe chests. For example, for this one, this has every green class engraving in the game, and I can open this up and pick any one I need. For example, I can pick the Bard one if I need it, or I can pick the Berserker one if I want to sell it, which I have been doing admittedly, and same thing for these blue ones. Now, you get a ton of these from doing islands, so if you really want to read some engraving books, this is an option. In addition, in every major city, next to the Chaos Dungeon, there's usually a vendor called the Exchange Chaos Dungeon Shard vendor. If you click on Zeneca, you'll be able to see that she sells Perception engraving recipe pouches for perception shards. And in tier 1 Chaos Dungeon, she sells green chests of either class engravings or battle engravings. And in tier 2, she sells blue chests. So where do you get these perception and where do you get these guardian shards? You get them by doing Chaos Dungeon after you've used up your 2 daily entries. So if you didn't know, every day you get 100 Aura of Resonance, which means if I do a Chaos Dungeon and I use up my Aura of Resonance, I'll get some of these listed rewards. These are used for upgrading your gear and so forth. But after you've used up all your Aura of Resonance, you can actually go back into the Chaos Dungeon even with 0 Aura of Resonance. As you can see here, it says can re-enter even with low Aura of Resonance. This is called the Infinite Chaos Dungeon, and if you grind the Infinite Chaos Dungeon, you can grind these Perception Shards over and over again. You can farm Perception Shards this way, and you can actually buy out all of these different materials. You can see that there's a weekly limit on each of them. For the engraving recipes, there's a roster limit, which means that once you buy these out, they're gone for that server, for your account. This is just another way you can get some engraving books to sell or to use for yourself. But I highly, highly recommend, if you only get one thing out of this video, do not waste your gold on buying engraving books. They don't really matter until tier 3 in my opinion. And if you really need them, you can get them by doing islands or Infinite Chaos Dungeon. Now there's one last really important thing for bards that I want to mention before I end this video, and that is the True Courage class engraving. I've been seeing a lot of bards running around with this, and I've been getting a lot of questions on the stream. Why don't we use True Courage? And if you're a bard, listen up, because True Courage is by far the worst translated skill I've seen so far in this game. Everything else has been pretty spot on, even though the new names are going to take me a little while to get used to, but True Courage is just straight up wrong. Now, if you've read my bard guide, you know that Desperate Salvation is an extremely powerful engraving, and almost every bard that's not trolling is going to take this engraving. It gives you a massive burst heal for everyone after any of your heals expires. Now, True Courage reads, at level 1, Serenade of Courage makes outgoing damage plus 10% and crit rate plus 10%. And at level 3, Serenade of Courage makes outgoing damage plus 20% and crit rate plus 10%. Now, Serenade of Courage, if you didn't know, is your Z attack buff song. Now, normally this song increases the damage of all party members by 5, 10, or 15% based on the amount of bubbles you had when you cast it. So why is True Courage bad? Some people might think, oh, it makes my attack buff stronger, and I love making my party members stronger. Not quite. It's actually a complete bait. Why is that? Because this engraving actually only applies to yourself. If you look at Serenade of Courage again, you can see that the first part says, use all your bubbles for damage to foes plus 15% for 120 seconds, regardless of the bubbles spent. Now, this is just extremely confusing and, in my opinion, very poorly worded, because the very next line says damage for all party members plus 5, 10, 15%. So what is the first line even talking about? How can it be plus 15 for 120 seconds regardless of bubbles, and then you get an extra? How does it work? The first line only applies to yourself. It only applies to yourself. I really hope you got that. Because the next line says the damage of all party members, which means they affect everyone. So when you use Serenade of Courage, you yourself get 15% personal damage for 120 seconds, and everyone else gets 5, 10, or 15% for 8, 12, or 16 seconds. And True Courage engraving only applies that extra damage and crit buff to the first line, which is only affecting yourself. Now you can see why True Courage isn't exactly a good idea. Investing a lot into it is buffing your own personal damage, which is very little to begin with. Now, just one extra tip I want to mention here. Remember how I mentioned that I have level 1 Drops of Ether and level 1 Desperate Salvation? I just want to quickly go over where I actually got this level 1 from. Now, the main way you get engravings in this game is on your accessories. As you can see, my necklace has a bonus effect of Domination and Swiftness. Those are the stats. And then under that, it says Random Engraving Effect. Now, each accessory can come with random engraving effects that add node +1 to a certain engraving. In this case, it's Desperate Salvation. Now, if we go back to my engravings page, you can see that my Desperate Salvation has 6 nodes activated. And what this means is for every 5 nodes that are activated, it will increase the level by 1. So since I have 6 nodes activated, that's more than 5, so I have level 1, but I don't have more than 10 activated, so that level 2 is not active. So why do we read engraving books? It's because on every character you have these 2 engraving slots that you can apply engravings to. If I click the plus button, because I've read 20 green Drops of Ether books, and you get this for free by the way from the tutorial, I can simply drag or right click or alt click, and then I can move and equip these Drops of Ether slots into my character. And since each of these increases the Drops of Ether node +3, I end up with a +6, again giving me level 1 drops of ether. The other way is by using an ability stone, which the game will cover in the tutorial. So how did I manage to get 5 different accessories with good stats that all have my class engraving on it? Well, actually, if you go to the party finder by hitting the colon button and go to the abyssal dungeon, you can see that there's 2 abyssal dungeons that you'll be able to do in the first tier. That is Ancient Elviria and Phantom Palace. The first one unlocks at item level 340. The second one unlocks basically when you finish the Rohendel storyline. When you clear these dungeons at the end, you'll be able to get a bunch of these accessories, and these accessories are guaranteed to have your class engraving as a random engraving effect. So a cheap way to get some accessories is to just do the abyssal dungeon. You'll get a bunch of gold, materials, and get these accessories that'll let you unlock your class engraving if you get the right drops. With that, plus your ability stone, plus these 2 engraving slots, you should be able to easily get at least level 1 in 2 engravings, and if you're very lucky or have read blue engraving books, even level 3 in 1 engraving and level 1 in the other. So if you get one thing out of this video, the first thing is that you don't waste your gold on engravings. The second thing, if you really need an engraving, just do islands. A lot of them give engraving rewards, and do the infinite chaos dungeon if you have time. And the third thing, if you're a bard, please, for the love of God, do not get true courage. True Courage is only useful in stuff like Chaos Dungeon or Tower or solo content where you need to buff your own damage. It is not good for anything that you're doing in a party because it doesn't even affect the party. The translation will not tell you that. Sorry if this video got a little bit long. Go ahead and enjoy the game now. This has been Ayu, and until next time, bye you.